Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 9 of Sunday Service. With me, your host, your minister, your pastor, your priest, leaning back into the religious themes that started this podcast, Aaron Chandler. Welcome. How was your week? Mine was good. I've had a good week, right? Monday started off pretty standard issue. It's Patrick's Day, actually. Actually, Monday was not a standard issue. It was St. Patrick's Day, which I talked about on the last episode a little bit. I alluded to Patrick's Day and the various proclivities we got up to in those times. Well, for me, it was all the night before. It was the night before that I got into my hectic manners on Patrick's Day. And I'll freely admit, the actual day of celebration, I did nothing. I didn't honor the fallen serpents. I didn't, take a long hard look at myself and my Irish heritage. I just sort of chilled. I woke up at noon, right, which wasn't great, but I'd been out late the night before, so it is what it is. At the end of the day, I'm not going to make an excuse for it, but I regret nothing. Missed the parade completely. By the time I was up and at it, out of bed, had the breakfast. Got on to a few of the boys in the hometown. I was in the city on Sunday. Like the Monday, I wasn't going to be leaving the hometown. I got on to a few of the lads I know from back home. Kind of assessed what they were doing. A lot of them were in the city, not in the hometown. So I was like, all right, the local pub wasn't an option. Now, the local pub isn't always an option, right? It's always an option because you never know what kind of characters you might run into in the local pub that you've known for many years, from around the town, right? I wasn't really feeling that. I wasn't really feeling, going down there, walking in the door, ordering my pint off the bartender, right? Trying to keep to myself necessarily, but opening myself up to conversation. But at the moment, I'm sitting at the counter on my own. And then maybe like someone that's really interesting who I haven't seen in years might walk in, who I'm like, oh, them and I, we need a catch up, maybe one of the baddies from way back in the day, like she rocks up, and fucking what do you know? She's still gorgeous, maybe that happens, or maybe a person several decades older than you who's wasted their life and is not interesting approaches you and decides to pester you for an hour. Which of those three scenarios is the most likely? I'll tell you which one. It's always that third one. That's always what happens if you ever go to the local without a plan, without an entourage, without a group, without a posse. If you go to the local on your own, some old fucker who you don't give a shit about. I don't want to say the F word twice. I'm not an animal. You don't give a shit about will, and then I said shit twice. Whoa, crazy. Yeah, I am an animal. He'll just start like yapping to you about something that you can't fully understand, right? I want to get into heaven, right? So when these like old people at the bar start talking to me, I entertain them for far too long because, well, they're going to die soon. So, and you're like, it won't be much longer. You know what I mean? You're just like, I can entertain them. I can entertain them for the 3 more hours they'll be alive. But then when they take up all of the 3 hours, and in those 3 hours they don't say anything interesting ever, that's when it gets a little bit dodgy, right? That's when it gets a little bit like, okay, get to the point. Get to the point. And I don't know, because like these old people, right? Like you'll meet people in the pub like 70, 80, 90 odd. They've been sitting at that bar stool drinking Guinness since time immemorial. They've been doing that since before I was in utero. My dad was splooging into tissue paper and these guys were at the pub swinging back Guinness. You know what I mean? I wasn't even a conception or an idea by the time these guys started doing that. They've had countless decades. they've lived full human lives and they don't have a single interesting story. And if they do, they're not sharing it. You know, they're just going to share about how Abby, the nice lady from the nursing home, does their shopping for them sometimes because they have trouble with it. I don't care. I don't care. You know, I like, say something interesting. You've lived, you've had a wife, you've had kids, you have grandchildren. Surely one solitary event has happened in your life that like has some substance to it that I could latch onto, that we could like have a real discussion about. And you know, obviously, like, I don't expect you to like launch into that right away in the first 10 minutes of a conversation. You know, we're not crazy people, but you've been talking for a good hour and a half, buddy. You've had 4 Guinness. You're not even tipsy, which is mad. Like, tell me how that happened. Tell me how you got to that place in your life where like 4 Guinness barely even affects you. I know Guinness isn't strong, but 4 Guinness should be affecting a person of that age, is what I'm saying. Like, getting them a little bit on the tipsy side, right? But no, they'll just sell. And like, if they do have one interesting story, guess what? You'll hear that 12 times. Like, you'll hear it 12 times, and then they say it again. And the 13th time they say it, the details will be inexplainably different. Like, inexplicably different. Like, it won't make sense how different the story is, to the point where you're just like, hey man, were you lying this whole time? And sometimes you're kind of like, maybe they were, you know? Because the thing about old people, right? This is what I've always believed about old people, right? Is, like, if you're that old, like, clearly what's happening there is, because by, like, old people, you look at them and like, biologically, you're like, that shouldn't be possible. You know, like, every old person, like, every person above the age of like 71, like, you look at their body and you're just like, that shouldn't work. You know, like, it should have given up by now. Like, look at a 30-year-old guy, right? Look like a 27-year-old guy. That's more accurate, you know? That's what a human being is. You know, a 27-year-old man, a 27-year-old woman, that's the prime. I know people say the prime is like a little bit younger, you know, like 24, 25, where I am now. God, I hope it isn't. No. 27 is the prime, because 27 is when you've got like, you're starting to get the maturity of a full adult, but you still look young and full of life and have energy. So that's where you want to be, right? Like, a 71-year-old person looks like they're already dead. Like, they look like a resurrected corpse. And yet they're just bopping around. And like, that's, you know, like, you kind of start to think, like, that's not supposed to be happening. You know, you're not supposed to look like that. You're supposed to be in the ground already. You know, in any other generation in human history, that's where you would be. You'd be in the dirt. And I was wondering, like, why does this happen? Like, and, you know, like, sure, like, you know, you could say, oh, like, modern medicine and this and that and yada, yada, yada. No, that's not what's going on, right? What's happening with these old fuckers is, do I want to swear on the podcast? Yeah. I think, like, in the early episodes, I had a lot of inhibition about, like, you know, being expressive in that regard. That's all gone out the window. Not all of it, but yeah, most of it, right? What's happening with these old people, and it took me a long time to realize this, is that God doesn't want them back. Because tales of old, right? All the old stories that are told in our society, they're all about how, like, old people, you know, our elders, like, they're worthy of respect, you know, like, that we need to, like, you know, take care of them. We need to listen to their words of wisdom. You know, we need to hear what they're saying, you know, take it on board and, you know, apply that wisdom to our lives for the betterment of all humanity. And I'm sure when the oldest person in your village was 48, that was probably a good idea. But when they're 70, something happens along the line. And what I think happens is this, is all of, like, the people who've lived really good, noble lives and, you know, made something of themselves and have contributed to society, God strikes them down. Because guess what? Heaven's waiting for you. Guess what? Heaven is knocking on your door. And they're saying, come join us for bottomless margaritas. That's what heaven's doing, right? Not to these people. You know? God doesn't want them. And with good reason, because they're boring. They have nothing of interest to. They have nothing of interest to say. They have nothing of value to say. They have no opinions that are, digestible. They have no, they have no kind of, they have no character to them really. Like their entire personality and existence revolves around being that person in your pub who drinks 12 beers every day. That's all there is to them. Their wife is dead. Their kids don't talk to them. Maybe their husband is dead if it's a girl. I've typically only seen men be the lonely loser in a pub. Women, I don't know what it is about women, but women seem to hit their stride in their friendships around the age of 68. I don't know what that is, because right these days, you'll see if you're scrolling on a girl's Instagram, which I do a lot, right? And that's fine, that's my business at the end of the day. Here's what you got to do, right? Next time you're looking at a girl's Instagram, instead of pinch and zooming in on, who knows? Instead, what you'll do is this. What you should do is go back to her last birthday post. Every girl has one. Men don't do birthday posts. We don't do that because, other men, they don't allow it. Well, I don't know why. That's just not something we're allowed to do. I know that if you do it, you get bullied. I don't know what's actually wrong with it on any sort of analytical level. You know what I mean? Most of the lads, they'll just kind of say it's cringy. Why? What are the dynamics there? You know what I mean? It's like you're celebrating your birth. What's wrong with that? But people disapprove of it completely. So we don't do it. It's avoided. And that'll just show you the kind of guy I am. You know what I mean? Because I'm just I'm not a cool guy, but I know my place. I know how to fly under the radar, right? I know how to lock in and make sure that I don't look like a fool. If you look at a girl's Instagram page, it's basically 100 photos. You go to a birthday post, they're every 10 posts, a healthy woman will make about 10 Instagram posts a year, a little bit more than that. And you're kind of all right, your dad wasn't around, right? A healthy man, he'll do one a year, maybe, right? When he goes to a football game. A friend of mine does a bit about that, actually. He's a cool guy, But you look at these women's posts, right? And you look at their birthday posts and it'll be them. And, they'll be at a bar, a cool kind of hip bar where they do cocktails, right? And it'll be her and her gals, right? And it'll be two friends who are kind of, of a similar flavor to her, a similar genre of woman, you can tell okay, they kind of, these girls were always going to get along if they met, you know what I mean? They have certain features in common. And then there'll just be some rogue element woman where you're just all right, how did she get in the mix? You know what I mean? It's kind of your personalities don't match up. It's what happened there? I don't really know exactly what happened there. Maybe it's they've been friends since they were kids kind of situation. Maybe not. I'd hate to speculate, right? Because we're going to get into territory that is just a bit dodgy. And we're only 13 minutes in. Maybe we'll save that for the end of the episode. Or maybe I'll forget about it by then and won't bring it back up, right? But you look at these pictures and you'll be all right, this woman's got a fairly good, healthy friendship group. There'll be maybe 4 or 5 other girls in the picture. There'll be a couple pictures of her, just her on her own, maybe one with the boyfriend, And then, that awkward picture where, the girl and the boyfriend are standing in front of the balloon. And, she's, kind of, got her arms around him he's, a painting. He's not a real person. He's just something for her to hold on to look good. He looks kind of vaguely uncomfortable about the whole thing because his friends are going to bully him for this because, men don't like it when other men find love and are happy, because that's, yeah, the boys know what I'm saying. The boys know what I'm trying to get at there. I'm not going to say it. He's gay. And that's fine, because when we say that word, we don't mean he's homosexual, because there's nothing wrong with being homosexual. There is something wrong with being gay, And like gay guys too, they don't want to be gay, you know, they want to be homosexual, they don't want to be gay. Like that's like, you know, like that, it doesn't mean what you think it means, you know. And should we stop saying it? Maybe. Am I going to? No. Am I going to stop saying it on the podcast? Maybe, if that is something that's in my political interest. Am I going to stop saying it in real life for my close friends? No. Am I going to stop saying it in front of certain people? Depends on if I stand to gain anything from them. By accommodating their worldviews, you know what I mean, right? But anyway, you look at the woman's post a year later, and you know she's still there with the same guy. You know, he looks slightly more sad now, right? Like there's like 1,000-yard stare in his eye, whereas before he's kind of smiling awkwardly. Now he's kind of doing the, you know, if you're doing the audio only version, you can't saw that, but that was a great impression. And then like in the next year, you know, on the 21st he's like that, and then next year, you know, on the 22nd he's kind of like, you know, again, brilliant impression there. You know what I mean? And then you won't recognize anyone else in the post. Like it's just a completely different group of people, and you're just kind of like, all right, what happened? And look, we know what happened. And that happens to them a lot. Like, you know, they go through cycles, you know, because eventually, you know, like one of their friends will cross them, right? One of them will like, you know, step out like, fucking, I gotta go balls to the walls here. You know what? No one's listening to this shit. You know, and if someone does, you know, I like to just point out that this isn't reflective of my true opinions, even though everything I'm about to say here is what I actually think. You know, the thing about women is like, you know, women, when they become friends with someone, they're like, all right, in what category, you know, like women will meet a girl, right? And they'll kind of get along, they'll be vibing. And then eventually, like, you know, the two girls, they'll be looking at each other, and one of them will look at the other and they'll go, all right, in what ways am I objectively better than this bitch? Right? And then they assess that. And then once they've assessed in what ways they're the better specimen of a human, they'll go, oh, now we can be friends. And what they're not aware of, or what they are aware of, but they choose to ignore, I don't know exactly how they do it, is that the other woman is doing the exact same thing. And then at some point in the year that they're friends, that will become apparent. It'll become apparent that both of them think they're better than each other. And then the relationship falls apart. Now none of that actually happens. That's just my kind of slightly misogynistic worldview. But, well, look, I have 5 sisters. I've grown up in a house with just girls my whole life. I love women very much. I love my younger sister, my older sisters, my mother, you know? Like, there are people I love very much, but based on observational evidence, everything I said there is actually probably definitely correct. I don't know what it is, but they just always seem to have falling outs. And I guess it's just like, I know, like, I think what it is actually is they're just healthier than men. Because men will become friends with a guy, and then that's just it. Like, you'll meet another man as a man, right? And you'll start talking to him, you'll like be chatting away. And eventually at some point, he'll like just have the same interests as you in like some field. And then you're just like, oh, we're friends now. And then no matter what he does, that bond is just sacred. Like he could commit heinous crimes. He could go out and stab someone in the face, and you just be like, yeah, but like, you know, he does like the Pokemon as well. Like that's how men do friendships. Like I think women are just like, you know, like, yeah, like I guess when she committed that moral wrong against me, I couldn't really move past that. Whereas men are just kind of like, like, you know, like I suppose like if he's gonna be there, like it would be weird if I didn't talk to him. Like, you know, I know he stabbed me in the eye, but like he didn't remove my vocal cords. Like I could still have a chat with him. You know what I mean? So actually, I think women just probably are like a little bit more mature than us in that regard. Now, fuck. Okay, I don't know why, but I stopped recording the audio for the podcast again. I noticed it right away though, so you didn't miss anything, right? Now I just had to cut those together. That's really annoying. What was I just saying there? So like, yeah, I gave 2 kind of views on what the whole women cycling through friendships very quickly and men not doing that dynamic is all about. Guess which one is my real opinion? The answer might shock you. Both. You can do that. You can have two opinions that are completely different. You're allowed. You're a human being. Like, you're not a computer. You know, you're a person. You know, it's called like it's literally called the human condition. Deal with it. I think both of those things equally at the same time, and there's nothing any of you can do about it. So, boom. But yeah, but like then at some point, like around the age of 68, you know, women, they'll get together with the gals, they'll start playing bridge, and you'll know they'll just be like, you know what, like these girls are actually all right, you know. Like, and I guess at like 68, you're just not going to do anything to upset anyone at that stage. You know, you're just kind of at that stage in your life where you're just kind of like, all right, I've said my piece, you know, unless you haven't, in which case you're a real piece of shit and you're starting to say your piece at long last, and it's getting tiring for most people, right? I'm so mad that I messed up the recording of the audio, to be honest, like, cause it's a mistake I make every single week, which is that I just press the escape key just out of like habit, just like because I'm bored. I'll just press the escape key, just fidgeting, and then it stops the recording, and then I have to start again, and that's really, really annoying. But yeah, women like they just lock in on like a group of friends when they're 68, and then they'll just be friends with those girls until they die, even though they only met them when they were 65. Like, more power to them, to be honest. You know, I guess men, like, when men get to that age, they're done making friends. You know, they're just like, well, like with men, like, I guess once our friends die, that's kind of it, which is a bit sad, you know. But also, like, making a new connection at 68, it's just not worth it, is it either? You know what I mean? It's like, what, I'm going to make a new friend so that one of us can die in 2 years? Like, that's a lot of effort to put into like something that's not going to last very long. So, you know, that's a little distance between the genders there. But then, yeah, what I wanted to get at is that this guy is sitting in the bar. He's like 68 years old. And it's like, he's just sitting there. And it's like, oh, God doesn't want him. You know? That's why he's not dead. Is because God is having a blast in heaven. You know, the vibes are popping off up there. And he'd ruin it. He'd ruin the vibes. And let's face it, Lincoln Mozart and the boys are putting on a concert up in heaven. And God just doesn't want him there, just sitting in the corner with his pint, just going, and I had a daughter once, I think, but Jesus, well, do you know what happened to her? And then you're just like, that sounds like an interesting story. And he's like, no, but yeah, I was down in Aldi the other day, and they actually gave me a chicken that was going off the next day, and I said, well, I can't buy chicken that's going off the next day because I'm not going to cook it until Saturday. And then I thought they were trying to scam me, so I never miss a trick me, so I went up to the woman there, and I said to her, I want my chicken to have an expiration date that's in a few days, because that's when I'm going to cook it. And you're like, what about your dead daughter? You know, God doesn't want them. And like, they haven't done anything wrong enough for the devil to claim them either. You know what I mean? And the devil probably doesn't want them, because hell, that's vibes. You know what I mean? Like, probably. Like, I imagine hell is great crack, you know? Like, you don't want to be in heaven with all of the fucking losers who never cheated on their wives. Like, that's boring. You know, like, you get up there, like, and everyone's just like, oh, hi, how are you? Yeah, well, it's really a great day, you know? Like, I'm so glad we all prayed all the time forever. Intolerable, you know? Like, hell is just such a mixed bag. Like, I think hell is probably the exact same as real life here, where it's just like a lot of like sure, like, there's definitely evil, horrible people down there, but most of them are just kind of normal people who are like, you know, just vaguely shitty. And that's what hell probably is, you know what I mean? But just with no good people to balance out the evil, horrible people at the end, you know? And then, like, I guess that kind of creates a negative vibe, because I know, like, at least if there's like a kind of a good guy around, like, at least you and Hitler can make fun of him together. But now if you're the morally best person and Hitler's the morally worst guy, it's like, oh, where does this leave me standing? You know what I mean? Because I don't want to hang out with Hitler and his gang, but I do want to be I want to be in the cool club, you know? I don't know how I'd handle hell. I don't know what my political dynamics would be there. You know, I imagine it's much like joining a gang in prison. You kind of have to link up with someone. I'd probably link up with the Mongolians. You know what I mean? Because they were more like, you know, they were horrible, but there wasn't much thought put into it. You know, like the amount of thinking you have to do to become a Nazi is insane, right? Like you've got to like have so many complex ideas, and then just be like, yeah, so what's the worst possible version of this we can go with? You know, like you have to like to become a Nazi, you have to have a reasonable understanding of 20th century philosophy, and then just be like, yeah, and then Jewish people are bad, I guess, you know, and there's so much thinking and like kind of like concocting and like you know, arguments and like axioms that go into that. It's just like that's just not worth it. Whereas with the Mongols, they're just like, yeah, well, like if we see people that aren't us, we shoot them, and that's fine, you know, and then we take their women, and you know, and that's fine, you know, like there's no thought behind the Mongol way of like, they just did it because that's what like they were used to, that's what felt natural to them, you know, and I respect that kind of thing. Whereas the Nazis is just like what was Hitler on with that like whole Aryan race shit? Like, why are you bringing Lord of the Rings dynamics into your political beliefs? You know, like why do you need to have like a fantasy justification for killing and murdering? Like, if you're gonna do it, just do it. You know what I mean? Don't role play it. Like, don't make up stories about like a fictional history where like blonde people were cool. Like that. Like that's something a loser would do. Just have your horrible beliefs and act on them like a man, like a real man. Like, oh my God, like I don't know, like Jesus, like I can't believe Hitler was in prison for 7 years and he just wrote fan fiction about like how white people are great. That was what he did with his prison time. Like read meditations, you know what I mean? Like read the Bible. Oh man. And yeah, like that's like the worst thing about the 20th century is that all of like the horrible atrocities that were committed, they were committed by just like dorks. You know, this could be a bit, especially since the way I'm saying it now probably isn't the way I would say it if I could say it all again from the beginning. You know what I mean? But like they're all just wearing their little suits and they all have their little book and they're all like, this is what I think about the world, you know? Whereas like people like the Mongolians or like what's another kind of great power? Like the Romans were kind of nerdy too, but in more of a cool kind of aesthetic way. Yeah, like it's, I guess all like the 20th century guys, they just wanted to be like the Romans but better. And then like that's a bit, I don't know what the right word is, but it's just like, you're not them, you know what I mean? It's like, stop trying. It's trying too hard. Because the Romans were what they were naturally, you know. They kind of had like, you know, their fanfic made sense to them in their head. And anyway, it's kind of like you're trying to emulate something that's already been done at the end of the day, guys. And it's kind of like, oh, maybe just leave it. Maybe just leave it where it is. Maybe do your own thing, you know. Maybe don't like try to be you know, maybe like look into your own soul and see what you want to do rather than just trying to copy the cool kids, you know. So that's something. I don't know, man. Like I think what the Nazis really needed was at some point, like, you know, Hitler, Goering, Goebbels, you know, the lads, they were all sitting around, you know, like playing their D&D campaign, like where they were all just like, yeah, so the Hyperborean Aryan spirit is actually the centerpiece of Western culture, you know. The skull shape of the European Caucasian is actually superior to the skull of the African continent. The Mediterranean Sea is the great veil between the civilized people and the savages. And like at some point, they just needed like a really buff guy to come in there and be like, hey, I want your lunch money. But I guess the currency was inflated to the point where that wouldn't have been the logical thing to do. That's what happened. The bullies didn't need lunch money anymore because the currency had inflated to the point where money was valueless, and therefore did not, you know, call Hitler and his bros out on being fucking losers, and then we got the Nazis. So the moral of the story is that bullying is good. I gotta fill an hour, you know what I mean? At the end of the day, you know, like it can be hard. It can be hard. You know, so yeah, so God the reason all people exist is because God doesn't want them. Because heaven is vibing and he doesn't want their vibes ruining it. So he's keeping them alive until they do something bad enough that he can justify throwing them into hell. Which is, a bit of a cheat code, but hey, whatever, it's your universe, right? Women, you see, the thing is as well, is when I say the word women, I land a little bit too hard on the end to the point where it's like a little bit like, all right, who hurt him? What girlfriend did he have or didn't have that ruined his views on the dynamics between the sexes? And the truth is that hasn't happened. All of the relationships I've been in have been very positive, and usually it was my fault they ended, but in a way where I realized it afterwards and felt really bad. But I think I just listened to too much Bill Burr growing up at the same time, so that's why I land on it in that way that kind of seems a bit antagonistic. And I'm sorry, but not really. Enough for me. I'm sorry enough for you guys to keep listening, but not enough to not keep saying it. One of those ones, right? So that was Monday. That was the Paddy's Day. So yeah, so I didn't go to the pub. So I didn't go to the pub because I didn't want to risk that happening. So I just sat at home, and I contemplated. I looked at my PlayStation for a while, right? I got the PS5 there, no big deal. I bought one like fucking 7 years after it came out or whatever. I think it was like 2 years after it came out, because you couldn't get those for ages, which was a bit of a, I don't know, like, to be honest, if I created the most popular product on the planet, I think what I'd do is make enough of them so that everyone who wanted one could buy one and then make more money. But that's not what they did. And hey, I guess it's working out for them. I don't know. They're still releasing games for the PS4, which is pretty crazy. I was looking at this and I was thinking, like, do I want to get back into gaming? Because see, at this point, like, I was pretty, like, I've kind of gotten, over the past week, I've kind of been focusing on, like, the comedy and the writing and the content creation enough more that I'm kind of like, all right, I deserve to treat myself to something in my free time. And it's like, okay, either I start going to the gym or I start gaming again. And obviously there's one of those things that I should do, and then there's one of those things that I actually wanted to do. And I do want to go to the gym, but like I do also want to play God of War Ragnarok again. The whole thing, from start to finish. Because the thing about games is they've gotten too good. Because like back in the day, like you'd be playing like Pokemon or something, and like your mom would come into you and she'd be like, oh, you can't waste your life away on the Pokemon, there's so much more to the world. And like you look at like the 4 pixels that made up Charizard, and then you look at like real life and like the lush vibrancy and the blue sky and like, the green trees and, the clouds and shit. And you just be like, yeah, there is more to the world than this. But now, like, if you play Red Dead Redemption and you look outside, like, you're just like, this game is objectively better, actually. Because there is way more beautiful and I have a horse. So why would I interact with real life at all? And that's the kind of inflection point at which gaming became a problem for humanity. Because now it's way better than existing, I remember I used to play GTA Online when I was young, which isn't photorealistic by any means, but it was pretty good graphics for the time. At the time, we thought like that was what real life looked like. And then, when games became better than real life, we were like, wow, real life really needs to kind of up its game. And it did somehow. It was a weird thing that happened in our brains there. So I used to play a lot of that. And I remember the reason I stopped gaming actually was because of GTA Online, because I was playing so much of that. By the time I bought it in like 2013 when it first came out, by the time I stopped playing it, which was in like 2020, 2019 maybe, I looked at my stats. The thing that inspired me to stop playing was I looked at my stats, and it tells you, like, it amalgamates all the time you've ever played the game, and it was over a year. And that's not like, that counts, that's just the seconds I've actually been playing the game, which means that, I didn't play the game every day for a year. I played the game enough time that if you put all that time together, it would equal 365 days. It would equal an entire celestial rotation around the sun. if you put together all the time I played that game. And I didn't even have the nicest office. I didn't even have the nicest air hangar. I didn't even have the best bunker. And I played it for a year of my life. A year of my human life was dedicated to that game. Sleep, breakfast, lunch, dinner, all compacted. An entire year's worth of that just went into playing that game. And now, was I balling out in it? Yeah. I mean, did I have the best stuff? No. But like, did I have a lot of cars in my garage? Yes. Did they all have nice paint jobs? Yes. Did any of that fulfill me in any philosophical sense? Definitely not. So I realized like I needed to part my ways with it, you know? And then Red Dead Redemption came out pretty much around that time. So that whole parting ways with thing got delayed by just putting the time into something else. Which was fine because that was a great game. And I don't regret playing that because I didn't put a year into that. I put like, let's say a month, and every second was worth it. You know, you can chalk off a month to your life. That's fine. You know, there's plenty of those. You only get like 80 years. And I'm 6'2" and a man. Let's face it, 70 max. At a push, I'm getting 70 years. Unless they kind of figure some stuff out in my lifetime, which they might. And you know, if I become a successful comedian, I'll be rich enough to get that stuff. So let's, you know, we'll bump me back up to 80. You know, you can't waste. That's more than 1% of your life. That's more than 1%. Unless you live to 100, a whole year is more than 1% of your life. And I spent it in Los Santos. Not a real city. That's almost as bad as spending a year of your life in Los Angeles. Luckily, it's slightly better, but still, things were getting dodgy. You know? So that was how Monday went. Right? I saw it all. Yeah, I was looking at my place on Monday. I was thinking about like either getting back into gaming or maybe like starting going to the gym. And I think we all know it, that you should just go to the gym, you know? But I would like to treat myself to a little video game every now and then. You know, maybe if a new one comes out. I bought Ghost of Tsushima with my PS5. I think maybe I should play. I haven't played it yet. Like, I think I should maybe play that, you know? What if I live streamed it and then it's content and then I don't have to feel bad about wasting my life? That's what the streamers do, you know? We'll think about that. Right? So that was Monday. Tuesday, nothing interesting happened. And that's okay. Wednesday, you guys got the worst episode of this podcast that was ever produced. Sorry about that. I tried my best in it. Thursday, I did a gig. Went pretty well, actually, the gig on Thursday. I tried a new joke, tried a new bit. It went really well. This week, I kind of locked in, you know? Like, all right, so I was always concerned. Like, I believe myself to be a very lazy person. And you know, like how sometimes in your life, like, there's just like one little thing you could do that could make your life just infinitely easier forever, and you just don't. Like, you know, like say your desk wobbles, and then like every day you sit down your, like, you know, you have your desk at work, and every day you sit down at your desk at work and wobbles a little bit. It's just a little bit wobbly and it's a little bit annoying. And then one day, you know, a year in, after a year of having these like little wobbles back and forth, you know, slightly nuisance to your daily life every single day of the year, at one point you just go, what if I just like put like some paper under it to balance it out? And then it never wobbles again. And then you're just like, oh, I could have done that the whole time. But like, it was never inconvenient. It was only inconvenient enough after a whole year for you to think about actually putting the effort to do that. You needed a year worth of frustration to put in 10 seconds of effort to actually fix the problem, which you could have fixed immediately from the beginning. But no, you needed that frustration to build up that long for it to be worth it. Because if it was slightly more wobbly, you would have done it sooner. If it was slightly less, you never would have done it. But it was just that right amount of wobbly where you're just like, I'll tolerate this for an exceptionally large amount of time, right? That's what it was. And yet, is the recording stopped? It's not. He's locked back in on the recording. He's doing great. And yet, you still suffer, even though you know in your head that you could have done from the start. And the next time some similar scenario arises, you'll wait again. You'll allow yourself to suffer, right? That happened. Something similar to that something akin to that. That's our word of the day, akin. Something akin to that happened to me when with my work ethic. So this week, what I decided to do is, so something that always happens to me is when I wake up in the morning, I reach over to my alarm, I turn off my alarm, which is on my phone, and then I look at my phone, and then I watch like, let's say 50 Instagram reels, and then I get out of bed. And what that does is now my entire attention span for the day is like 35 seconds max for any given event, right? So what I did this week, which I could have done this when I was 15. I could have done this the year TikTok was launched, which wasn't when I was 15. It was in like it was when I was like 18. I could have done this all the way back then, but I never did. What I did is I put my phone, instead of having my phone right next to my bed, what I did is I put it on the shelf that you guys can't see here. And that's where it is at night. And then what happens now is when I wake up, I have to get out of the bed and walk over to my phone to turn off the alarm. Now, one of the things that does is I can't sit in bed for half an hour now watching Instagram Reels. I'd have to at least get up to do it. But then, because the phone is slightly far away, the 10 extra seconds I have to think before I touch that phone, those 10 extra seconds, in those 10 extra seconds, I usually think I probably shouldn't look at 50 Instagram Reels. And that's all it takes. And then for the whole day, I'm productive and I'm doing work. I'm writing bits, I'm trimming down old bits. You know, I'm like thinking about meals that I could be making, getting ready to do some cooking. 10 seconds at the start of the day. Could have done it a decade ago. Didn't. Did it this week. We're back on track. We're back on track with our life. We got off track there for a decade a little bit. We're locking back in. You know, we'll get there. That's crazy to me. So yeah, I kind of feel like I fumbled that line earlier about how God doesn't want the old people, because I kind of diverted topics too much. Here's what I wanted to say, right? Is that all of the interesting people are dead because God took them. So now the old people we're left with are really boring, and you shouldn't listen to them because they don't have wisdom. They just have the same story over and over again. Right? And, you know, because what a good old person will do is they'll take interest, is they'll ask you questions, right? And I know a conversation is reciprocal at the end of the day, but a good old person will like launch in on you straight away. Like they'll see the potential of your youth and they'll want to cultivate that. You know, and the other thing that they get out of it, which is great, is that it keeps their mind young. It keeps them fresh, keeps them part of the community. An old person who's less desirable, this is what they do. They overhear you have a conversation, and then they are like, I remember my first time drinking a Guinness. It was at this counter 57 years ago, and I've been coming here ever since. That's what they do. And then the second that you're weak enough to go, oh, really? Now you're trapped. Because instead of wanting to make themselves not younger, because we idolize youth, but instead of wanting to keep their minds fresh and young and finding out what the new generation is, and engaging in the process of rebirth that shapes humanity across time, they're just like, no, let me drag everyone to where I am. Is it selfish reasons? Is it malicious reasons? Is it resentful reasons? Is it for even maybe a good reason? I don't know, but it's annoying. It ruins my beer, you know? And I don't even like beer. I just do it to hang out with my friends. So if I'm trying to hang out with my friends and you're all I've got, then what are we doing? So God won't take them because they'll ruin the vibes in heaven. The devil won't take them because they didn't do anything that bad. And, I bet he's kind of fucking with God a little bit as well. Do you think it's funny? He's kind of like, he's daring God. He's like, how long will you let one of these motherfuckers live? Let's see if we can get a 120-year-old. You know what I mean? Like some boring ass. Oh man. Like, you ever hear those stories about those guys who And for the record, I disapprove of drinking alcohol. I didn't start drinking alcohol until I was like 21. But like, it'll be like the guy in some like village in India, and he's 117 years old, and like they'll do the interview with him, and they'll be like, oh, so like, what's your secret to living so long? And he'll be like, well, I never drank, and I never smoked, and I never did any drugs, and I had the same breakfast every day. I had porridge since I was 6, every single day since I was 6 years old. I had a bowl of porridge with turmeric and strawberries and blueberries, a little bit of honey and chia seeds mixed in. That's me. And then I would go down to the well every day. I would do my job for 7 hours. I would come home. I would drink some plain water from the tap. And then after that, I would go to sleep at 9 o'clock every single night. And then I had a baby and a wife and some kids. And my wife took care of the baby, actually, and I kind of just worked. And then, when my friends would want to go on a night out down in Crane Lane, I would just kind of stay at home with the children. And then even when the children were grown up and moved on, then I'd still do that, actually, because actually the first time when I was staying home with the kids, it was noble, but now I'm just boring. They've lived 114 years and they haven't done anything. Like they've never left their village. It's like, oh, you wasted it. And that's why it was so long, because God was waiting for you to do something. He was waiting for you to make something of yourself. But no, well done. Well done on 114. And so, some of them probably have done stuff with their lives. I don't know. Just even having a job and having a family is a great noble achievement in and of itself. Who am I to judge, right? Who am I to judge, huh? I didn't really look at any of my topics yet. Which was, that's kind of, what's horrible about that is last episode was so bad because I was like, oh, I didn't write any topics down to prepare. And then this episode I wrote like 12 topics, and then I haven't looked at any of them. Yeah, all that stuff about the old men dying was off the cuff. I'm very funny. I look down a lot when I'm talking in this podcast. I think that kind of doesn't give me much confidence. By the way, like this outfit I'm wearing, audio listeners, you guys aren't going to get this. The aura is insane. It's a bit like, because usually I've had this cardigan a long time. Usually what I do with it is I would wear a dress shirt under it. But now I'm just wearing a t-shirt under it. And now, would it be even more of an aura if the t-shirt was a darker color? Maybe a dark brown or maybe like a deep maroon red. Hey, this isn't going up on PH. This is going up on YouTube. You know what I mean? We gotta take it easy. But the aura farming on this outfit is kind of going hard for real. The cardigan, it's working. And that's okay to say because the modern humor. Like my dad's generation. Like his humor was kind of based on ball busting a lot. And I growing up, that was my humor a lot. But I think like the Gen Z kind of community now are actually, our version of ball busting is kind of just like talking about how great we are in an ironic sense, but like in a way that kind of boosts our confidence as well. So we're hijacking getting a confidence boost without being too egotistical. We're being ironically egotistical, even though in the end you're still just being egotistical, right? The irony doesn't matter, if it's having the same effect on your brain. So that's kind of where we're at. But yeah, I look good, I was thinking like, I don't know, like it, like this outfit has a bit of aura about it, right? And I was thinking about aura a lot lately, like just like the act of like looking cool while doing something, right? Like I was doing laundry the other day, and I was because one of the things a lot of people do is they over pour on their detergent for the laundry, like. With a maximum load of an 8 liter or whatever, I don't know how many liters exactly my washing machine is, but with the maximum load of like a standard domestic washing machine, you shouldn't need more than 30 milliliters of detergent if you're using the liquid detergent, right? That's a little science fact for you, right? But most people over pour by quite a bit, and one that's bad for your clothes over time because the detergent doesn't wash out as effectively in the rinse cycle of the washing machine, so the chemicals kind of adhere to your clothes and wear them down. But two, it's just wasteful for you because laundry detergent is not cheap. So what I do always with my laundry is I measure out the detergent. You know, I measure exactly 30 mils. If I'm going with a smaller load, I'll even do like 20. And I'll measure it out in like these measuring cups, and I'll pour it into the machine. And then, you know, I might, you know, like if I want to kind of get a food stain, you know, like a food, you know, maybe I was wearing my white cardigan and I spilled a little red wine on it. Now I've never done that because I'm not a fool. I wouldn't drink red wine while wearing this bad boy. I'm not an idiot. But let's say that happened, right? And let's not go with red wine because that requires a different cleaning process. Let's say like a little bit of, you know, a little curry, right? Let's say I've got a little bit of curry on this, right? You know, I'd pour a little vinegar. I'd spot treat it with a little bit of vinegar before I put it into the washing machine to break down the organic compounds, right? You know, get rid of the stain a little bit more easily, right? That's what I do. If this was something you could put into a washing machine, it's obviously dry clean only. But I was doing that, you know, and I was thinking like, wow, I do kind of have a Breaking Bad aura about me right now. You know, I'm doing chemical measurements. I'm doing science. You know what I mean? That's, I think, why I'm so lazy. Is because I can kind of find entertainment in like just the most benign. Like I can literally like be doing like the most boring thing ever, and I'll just tell myself like I'll just be filling out a form in the office, and I'll tell myself, I'm like, yeah, I'm basically like Harvey Specter from Suits right now, filling out these forms. So that's pretty crazy. Yeah, it's like no, you're not. You're just a guy doing something really boring. You're not contributing anything to society. You're not cool. You're not him. But like I'll tell myself I am, and it'll be fine. So that's a little insight into what I do. But because of doing things like that, you know, like that laundry example is like one that sticks out to me. But like one of the things I want to kind of start doing, like I realized this year is like I kind of want to pick up smoking. And like I know it's so bad for you, but you just look so sexy at the same time as well. Like having like a proper cigarette, you know, like, oh, like, because I think I've mentioned this before on the podcast, but I love hanging out in the smoking area for the gossip at work. And all the time, like, there's a little bench in the smoking area. And all the time, I'll be sitting there at the bench, you know, like, you know, I'll be sitting here. There'll be someone right next to me on the left here. They'll kind of be like telling me a little story. And, you know, like, there'll be like just a guy standing here, you know, like a third character. And he's listening on the story too. And he's just standing there. He's going, you said that. Whereas I'm sitting there, and I'm like, he said that? Oh my God. And he's standing there like, mad one by. Like the casual nonchalance, the aura, it's worth the lung cancer. It has to be. Like Don Draper. Like, you know when Don Draper died of lung cancer? He's the main character in Mad Men, by the way. That's a show about a guy who just is attractive. And like that's the whole thing, I guess, is that he just has charisma and is attractive and people like him. I haven't watched it all, but I've seen enough to know that that's what the show is. Like, you know, when he died of lung cancer, like there was no suffering, you know what I mean? Like there was, but it was silent, you know? Like he wouldn't even go to the hospital, you know? Like he went to the doctors one day, they told him he had lung cancer. He was just like smoking in the doctor's office. Really? How long have I got? You know, like what's the chemo like? What are our options? Is health insurance going to cover this? Just like, how many more cigarettes can I smoke before I die? Like that's what he was doing, right? You know, because he was a real smoker. He was a real man. You know, I hate these smokers, like, who, like, start smoking cigarettes when they're, like, 12 and they get lung cancer when they're, like, 40. And they're just like, why is this happening to me? No, like, if you want to be a smoker, like, know that you're going to die, but do it anyway. Know that, like, this is going to be the worst thing you could ever do, but do it anyway because you want a farm aura on like a global basis, right? Like Don Draper, like he got the lung cancer diagnosis, right? He just started coughing sometimes. He'd push it down, you know? He'd be in the elevator, going up to his office, you know? And he'd start like, you know, he'd start coughing, and then he'd go like, and then like, he'd cough for like, he'd go, not whoa, no, because that's not him. He's cooler than that, you know? He'd go cough, he'd go, push it down because in his mind, he's pushing it down because what if the lift stopped right now and a baddie walked in? That's the constant mindset he was in. Is like, what if a baddie was looking at me right now? That's every action Don Draper ever takes is based on the principle that he's imagining that right now, like Alison Brie in season 1 of that show is looking at him in that moment. You know what I mean? I don't know what her role in the show is. I just know that she's a baddie. But like every decision John Draper makes is like, what if Sydney Sweeney was standing right there right now? That's every decision he makes. Is like, what would I do if that was happening? So he doesn't. So he never let out a coughing fit. Like he just go. He told his knuckle up to he told his knuckle up to his mouth, and he'd give like 2 coughs, and then like he'd look at his knuckle and there'd just be blood all over it, and he just take his handkerchief out and just wipe it away, and then like just toss the handkerchief in the bin, and then he'd just be like, Margaret, my secretary, get me another handkerchief. That's what he'd do. And then one day he'd just be sitting in his office in a meeting. He'd have just like sold the biggest ad ever, and then he'd be like, Margaret, get us a bottle of champagne, and then he'd be like, scratch that. Actually, whiskey's a way more manly drink. Margaret, don't tell anyone I was about to order champagne or I'll fire you. Hey, want to have sex later in my office? I know I'm married. She doesn't mind. She respects me. And then he gets like a glass of whiskey, and then him and Margaret have sex, and then afterwards Margaret goes back to her desk. And he's just there with his glass of whiskey, his tie is undone, top 2 buttons of the shirt there unopened. He didn't even take off all his clothes to have sex. He's in a rush. He's a busy guy. He doesn't have much time. The doctor said he had 120 days. It's day 128. He just sold the biggest ad ever. He's achieved something with his life finally, and he just sips that like glass bit of whiskey, and then he just lets out 1 cough. He goes, and then you just see the blood on his desk, and he just goes. So this is it, huh? And then he just closes his eyes and he lies back and he's just dead. Like that's how Don Draper smokes a cigarette. And that's like when you put it in terms like that, it's kind of like, how could I not smoke? How could I not smoke if that's my option? I don't know. Like it just looks so cool. I was thinking about this, right? I was thinking about this could be a funny thing too, because I found out that in Hollywood movies, whenever you see someone smoking, like the cigarette isn't real. Like it's like a fake thing that just like releases like this like, I guess like it's almost like water vapor or something, but it's not like tobacco, so it's like not really so you can light it indoors basically. It's not dangerous, right? As dangerous as secondhand smoke is. And I was thinking like, would they make those? Which means you must be able to buy them, because we live in a world of consumerism. If something exists, people can buy it, right? For the right price. See, I was thinking like, what if I just bought a box of them, and then just took them out to the smoking area and just in the corner and did it? Yeah, I already fucked her, and then they're like, "What, is that true?" And you go, no, but I just wanted to say something cool, right? And then like eventually someone asks you if when do you start smoking? And you just take out the box and it like has like a clown face on it, and you're just like, guys, you're never gonna believe it. And then like you all have a bit of a laugh, And so that's just like, now like the fact that like I haven't done that means that me saying I want to do that is actually really sad, because it's just like a weird little fantasy. But mark my words, I'll make that happen. So yeah, I'm going to start smoking cigarettes. I think it's probably, you know what? At the end of the day, buying a pack of real cigarettes is probably easier than buying a pack of fake ones and getting them shipped in from California or possibly Toronto if you're more of a television watcher. But then the lung cancer is a balls. But then you're going to die anyway because of like the limited nature of existence. And God would definitely think smoking is a bit cooler. That's why he kills smokers earlier, because they're, they got vibes, they got aura. All right, it's a tough decision. We'll have to think a little bit more about it. So next week I'll either have started playing the PlayStation again, going to the gym, or smoking, or possibly all three. And they'll all balance each other out, I think. So yeah. I don't know. Any other topics? I'm kind of like finishing up here. Like the hour's about to end, Is there anyone I could just go over like quite quickly, just kind of I went over. Oh, I actually did that one. To be fair, it was just in the back of my head. I met some like oh, you know, it was really great. I'll just end on like a little happy note. You know, I met some like friends from secondary school the other day. Like not friends. You know, we weren't friends in secondary school, but we weren't like enemies either. I'm lucky enough. I went to one of these secondary school where we liked each other. I noticed that like in a lot of the world, people don't like I guess in American movies, like, you know, they make it out like it's very cliquey. And that's just because like the people who write American movies are writers, and obviously no one liked them in school. So they were just like, yeah, all the jocks are really horrible bullies. And it's like, you know, man, you were just weird and they didn't like you. They were probably like really nice men. Like that's why they're successful now and you're doing this. You know, that's kind of my opinion. But I was just talking to him, you know, like, and it was like a great little catch because I haven't seen this guy in 5 years, right? And, you know, like, and what was great about it is that none of us are successful, you know? Because, I mean, like, you know, you get out of secondary school, right? And you kind of realize quickly, like, all of the delusions of life that, like, they tell you, like, none of that's going to happen. You know, you're not going to have this big career, you're not going to be rich, you're not going to own a house. That's not possible, right? But, you know, like, and I think people are kind of resentful of that fact. But, like, a second thing can happen then, which is a good thing, which is you realize, like, hey, that's something that's actually important, you know? The things that are really important are, like, you know, the people around me, my human connections, you know, like, seeing the world while I have a chance to be in it, like, I'm making it better if I can, you know, by, like, having a positive effect on other people's lives. And like, you know, I think like you realize that, and then you're just like, okay, but like, did it work out the normal way for anyone? And not even in a way like where you'd be resentful of it, but you just want to know like how things turned out. Because like one of the guys I met, like he's one of these guys that I just assumed would be successful in like a traditional way, and I wasn't resentful of that at all because, you know, like if you find a path in life that works for you, go for it. But like we all met up, and like, you know, none of us have lived the traditional life that you're supposed to live. You know, none of us did like, you know, go straight into college, do your 4 years, get your degree, get a job. None of us have done that, you know, like two of them, you know, they like lived away abroad for like a couple of years. Now they're doing their master's degrees. You know, like one of the guys, like the guy I thought was going to be like traditionally successful, he like got his degree, sacked it all off. Much like, you know, kind of in not a dissimilar story to mine. And he like, you know, just like he cycles around the world now. You know, he cycled from Ireland to Turkey, you know, with a bit of help from a boat there at one stage. You know, now he's going to do Canada to Argentina in the new year. Like he's fucking like, you know, you're kind of like, all right, you know, like we figured it out, you know, and we haven't figured it out, but like, you know, we've all kind of matured and grown, and we can kind of come together now and have this moment of like going like, hey, like, you know, this is what life was really about, and we figured it out, and that's good. And that's nice. That was really nice, you know? And then one of them looked like a baddie as well. Like one of them was gorgeous. And they might listen to this, and that's fine. Like, just so you know, like, actually, no, like there were two of them were girls. So I'll say both of you looked like baddies, but one of you, like, you know, one of you was like, you know, beautiful back then, but like, I don't know what improvements you've made in the meantime, but well done. And not even in a way where like I want to go out with her, but just in a way where I was just like, oh, like, you know, because I don't know, like one of the things that happens in like secondary school, and like like, you know, when you're growing up, like what happens is like you kind of get so used to the people, you're around the same people all the time. You know, there's like 30 to 40 people, and you're around them for 6 to 7 years. You know, like a little more than 6 years, I guess, when you take into account the summer holidays and stuff. And you just like, they're the only people you know. You know, maybe you meet some like other people at a house party every now and then, but like that's kind of it. You know, they're the only people you know. So then when you like get into the real world, you know, like all the girls like in secondary school, you thought like, oh, like she's the most beautiful girl, or like even like the smart kids, you know, like you're like, oh, like he's the smartest kid I've ever met. You know, like once you get into the real world, you realize like, oh, like I was in such a microcosm of what the world really is. Like you realize, oh, like there are like these geniuses out there who know way more than me. You know, there are like athletes out there who are way more impressive than anyone I went to school with, even though there was a time where I didn't even think I could compare to any of them. You know what I mean? And then you see just like the most beautiful women in the world, and you're just like, okay, well, girls from back then just weren't living up to that. Like they were only the most beautiful women I've ever met because they were the only women I'd ever met, you know? And I was kind of thinking that would happen a little bit And then I went back and I was like, oh no, like, you're still in the top 1%. Well done. You know, so I turned a happy story there into kind of a slightly perverse one. And that's kind of the type of guy I am. You know, I mean, look, how do you expect me not to talk about girls a little bit? You know, I'm young, I'm single. You know, it's not my obsession. Like, it's not all I think about. But right now, it's like, I'm in that kind of mindset. Because, look, to tell you the truth, guys, and look, like, I don't say this often, you know, because it's true. It's deeply true. And I don't want it to be known that this is how I think. But I get lonely. You know, I get very lonely, you know? I'll sit in a room full of people, you know, hanging out with my best buds in the world, you know, we're all having a laugh. And I'll just think, like, you know, what I really need is just some companionship. I just need a friend, you know? Someone to tell me it's all going to be okay, you know, someone to love me, you know? And then unfortunately, is that that's also tied up with hormonal lust for some reason. Even though they're kind of two very different opinions. But to have one, you have to necessarily have the other. So the fact that I'm objectifying women is just actually an indication of, like, my deep emotional turmoil. And that's me playing the victim. But in a way that I think was clever enough to actually garner sympathy. Because I'm so alone. You know? And nothing will ever be able to fix that, you know what I mean? You know? I'll get married to a beautiful girl, you know? The love of my life, you know, she'll be smart, funny, great mother, you know? She'll make me very happy. I'll make her very happy, you know? And then when we go to bed at night, you know, we're both reading a book there, you know? She turns off her little light, she goes, I want to go to sleep now, Aaron. And I go, I love you, honey, I'll see you in the morning, you know? And she'll turn over, and she'll like, you know, she'll face her way, I'll face my way. She'll go to sleep, you know? Within moments, she'll be conked. I'll still be awake. The second she falls asleep, I'll just think, but in my soul, I'm still so alone, right? Yeah. In my soul, I'm empty, right? Because it's not other people that I needed. It was something in myself, and I never found it. And now I don't know what to do because it's too late. I'm grateful for what I have. But the void is still there in my heart. I probably should have just gone to therapy, but I didn't. I'm not going to now because, you know, yeah, it's almost over. You know, kids are almost grown. You know, I'm sure my wife won't last, like, you know, I mean, people die, you know. We're 60 now. You know, one of us is going to croak. It'll probably be me first. You know, hopefully. Because if you die, then I'll realize actually I wasn't that lonely, and now I really am. That's a bit sad for the end of the episode, actually, there. Okay, that was a bit, oh, whoa. Did we take it a little bit too deep there? I kind of thought there'd be a clever punchline at the end of that, and there wasn't. I got a little bit too deep on the lonely thing. In a way that, like, was true, but it didn't need to be said, you know? Because now I'm just alienating people, right? You know, people get lonely. Hey, you know, that happens. You know what I mean? Hey, guys have emotions. You know what I mean? Men have emotions too. You know, will I ever cry about it? No. You know, this is a bit of I guess what I was kind of alluding to there was conquest in the end of season 3 of Invincible. That was pretty cool, right? Except none of you were going to kill me, and now you all know my secret, and it was embarrassing. Do you think, like, you know, because, like, Cecil, at the end of Invincible season 3, right, Conquest, like, does this monologue to Invincible where he's just like, you know, I'm so lonely, no one likes me, everyone's afraid of me, you know, they all just think I'm a monster, and then I prove that I am. But, you know, I could do a lot more, you know, I could bake cupcakes, you know, I could be a dancer, you know. And then he looks into his eyes and he's just like, take it to your grave, kid. And then he's about to kill him. But then Mark, Invincible, he gets the upper hand and he actually, like, almost kills Conquest, you know. But at the end of the episode, it's revealed that, like, you know, Conquest is holding on by a thread, but he's unconscious, right? Do you think when he wakes up, he's going to be like, oh, fuck, Invincible knows my secret. Oh, God, I have to kill him. Oh, God, he knows that I want to be a dancer. Oh, God, he knows I want to make he knows I want to bake cupcakes. Oh, God, I can't have people knowing that. Oh, my God, it's so embarrassing. That would be pretty funny. That would be pretty funny if that's what happened when he woke up. So yeah, that wasn't the funniest joke, but it just got us into a lighter mood after that weird kind of darkness there that I thought I'd navigate my way out of successfully, but I didn't, and that's why I'm alone. I'm doing a show on Ennis next week. I mean, no one listens to this, so it's not like you're going to come. But like on the off chance, the only person who listens to this, which is 0 people, lives in Ennis, come see that. And God bless. God bless and have a great week, guys. Okay, thank you for listening to episode 9 of Sunday Service with me, Aaron Chandler.